The legacy of the great George Washington was built from the ground up. From humble beginnings as a curious child, whose intellect and desire to be accepted led him to study manners and stoicism, and develop the quiet, composed demeanor for which he was so well known. As he continued to grow from a young, audacious colonel into the awe-inspiring general of the Continental Army, he stood for unwavering strength that caused his soldiers and the American people to see him as a larger-than-life hero. At times throughout the American Revolution, it was only his constant, steady composure that kept the American Army fighting. General Washington led his men through more than their fair share of defeats and key victories that were powered by the pure need of the tiny sprout of a nation. When, finally, the British agreed to give up their possession of the colonies and recognize them as the United States, everyone was celebrating, except for the jaded and unpaid army that won the war with their blood. But George stomped out the choking weeds of rebellion during the Newburgh Conspiracy and protected the blooming nation from all other dangers with his broad back. He accepted a presidency that he never wanted after nearly a decade of leading a war he had won by the skin of his teeth and the sweat of his brow. And yet, he knew there was no other way to ensure that the young, adolescent sapling he had nurtured for so long would become the great oak it was meant to be. So he answered the call for his service yet again to become the first president of the United States. George never had biological children of his own, but Martha brought 2 children into their family from her first marriage. Not only did George become a stepfather to 2 children, and later became a step-grandfather to 4 grandchildren, but he seemed to also metaphorically adopt the American people. What George accomplished in his life earned him the title of Father of his country. His beloved home, Mount Vernon, regularly saw a parade of friends, family, and really anyone within a 50-mile radius. He, the tired father after work, often cooped himself up in his office to recuperate. George Washington gave up what might have been a good, happy, ordinary life for a life that was wrought with heavy loss, heartache, and ended in a legacy larger than life, rendering untold blessings to the future inhabitants of the entire world. Introducing the very last in the 7K series, George Washington. An American icon, an American hero, an American life. Only from 7K.